in the space of 100 years, it's just going to be Ashkenazi Jews and Mormons.
Population decline is cataclysmic, and I don't think people realize it.
Passion, be about it all action.
But you want to know why they're not dating? Because they saw what happened to their brother.
Having children is not cultural for us. It's theological for us. We are a sci-fi pagan sex cult. You heard it. The only people who think that Latter-day Saint women are uneducated are people who've never talked to a Latter-day Saint woman. It's not smaller families, it's fewer families.
Oh, that's so sad.
This is unique to our religion. Yes.
So you are practicing godhood every time you do anything for your children.
Okay.
It doesn't go away, no matter where you are. If you're an African Latter-day Saint, an Asian Latter-day Saint, an American Latter-day Saint.
I thought it was just because we were hotter and we couldn't help ourselves.
That helps.
This video is brought to you by ScriptureNotes.com. For a free trial to Scripture Notes, please make sure you check out the link in the description. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I'm your host, Cardinellis, and today I am joined in the studio by Luke Hansen, editor-in-chief of Ward Radio News, as well as via Zoom by the associate professor of all things apocryphal, Jonah Barnes. And today we're going to be talking about this little ditty, this little factoid right here, and your necessity, your holy charge, your not scholastic, ecclesiastical duty to make babies in order to save the planet. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking today about making babies to save the planet. And for those of you that are wondering, where are the women in this conversation? All of our woke scold hate watchers, they're going to be actually having a very similar conversation with a very similar title over on Ward Radio Women. So if you haven't subscribed yet to our channel, please make sure that you subscribe. So you have the ladies of Ward Radio Women, all of our wives talking about the exact same thing. Luke, what do you got to say, my man? What do you got to say?
We were trying to get Brittany on us, but she was too busy working. So take that, feminist.
Just in a good, wholesome job that allows her to be with her children. Yes, you're exact.
Just all of us not working, just messing around.
Yeah, so we're a bunch of stay-at-home dads right now. All the stay-at-home dads are actually, podcasting. So anyway, we're going to have actually a lot of fun today talking about making babies to save the planet. Now, you were the brainchild of this, Jonah Barnes. Tell us, how does one make babies in order to save the planet, and how are you just like Elon Musk? Go.
I love how you so casually begin the episode with and for all our evangelical hate watchers out there, we're going to do it's such a regular.
No, that's the woke scold hate watchers.
Yeah, probably more than this time.
The evangelical hate watchers are watching us and they're like, yeah, family values. And we're kind of like, well, why if you don't believe families are eternal? And there's you know what I'm saying? But anyway, okay. Keep going, bro.
All right. The impetus for this episode comes from the first utterance of the Lord God Almighty to mankind when he gave them the very first blessing. He said, the very first commandment.
Okay.
Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth.
Wait, what scripture is this? Because I'm going to go to Scripture Notes now to pull this up so everybody can see it.
Or Nota de la Scriptura. Head to Genesis 1:28.
Okay, cool. So Genesis 1:28. Hit it. Keep going.
Genesis 1:28. This is the first commandment given to mankind, to be fruitful and multiply. And that doesn't mean Fruity Pebbles. I guess it could be Fruity Pebbles.
That's pretty good. I see what you did there, bro.
That is to have a lot of babies. The Lord was psyched about replenishing the earth with humans. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints loves this commandment. We are like the best at this commandment, might I just say. And Elder D. Todd Christofferson once gave a talk called The First Commandment First.
Oh,
where he talks specifically, I think it was a devotional. Let's see, devotional. Yeah, BYU, a BYU devotional where he gave this, they're talking about the first commandment, saying the first commandment is still in force. First commandment is still in force. We are not done having babies. Now,
by the way, Scripture Notes has a really cool link to this verse. If you go from Scripture Notes and you click on the side, it'll take you to AI Assistant Daniel, Bible Hub, Blue Letter Bible, even the Joseph Smith translation. Well, I just clicked on Bible Hub to see what it said. And dude, the New International Version, the first other alternative version that comes up, is pretty based. It said, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. rule over the
Yes.
fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Like, rule over. Like, this sounds like,
Right.
this is my domain. Like Dane Cook when he was talking about like his dad in his bathrobe. This is pretty freaking hilarious. So anyway, keep going.
One translation of that in Hebrew is to just dominate. The word is dominate the earth. It's like, whoa. But remember, the proclamation to the world on the family says, and I quote, "The first commandment that God gave to Adam and Eve pertained to their potential for parenthood as husband and wife. We declare that God's commandment for his children to multiply and replenish the earth remains in force." This is unique to our religion. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But remember, in the Bible, it calls Adam and Eve, Adam and Eve. In the Book of Mormon, it calls them our first parents.
Oh,
Okay? The Book of Mormon has baby making in it, baked in from the beginning. Okay, having babies, parents. Okay, so here's kind of an interesting thing about this. This is a plug for keeping your journal. Sister Lily Fries, and I think this was like 1890 or something. So this is years after Joseph Smith is dead.
Okay.
This woman, Sister Lily Fries, she says she's speaking to like a conference of young women, I think it was.
Okay.
And by the way, you know what? I should cite this or else people are going to freak out. Young Women's Journal, Volume 2, 1890 to 1891, page 81.
Okay.
Prophecy
Cool.
recorded by
You sure
Lily
it wasn't ChatGPT, Jonah? You can be honest here.
That's-
Oh wait, who was this? Yeah, we use ChatGPT to prepare all our citations. No, so this woman, she says, when she's talking to she's this old woman, she says, "It makes me feel very weak when I know you are looking for me to instruct you. I suppose each of you has offered up prayer. It is an eating. You have how necessary it is for us to read them, to read our journals." She's saying, read your journal. "I am pleased with the subjects of your essays and lectures. There has not been an article written. We should post ourselves regarding the prophecies that have been predicted." She says, if you hear a prophecy, you got to record it. I will mention one in particular that was uttered by Joseph Smith, the prophet. He said the time would come when none but the women of the Latter-day Saints would be willing to bear children. Okay.
Whoa.
So this is kind of a secondhand account, but she says, I heard him. She's talking about that it's a secondhand account. She's saying, I heard this and I wrote it down and I'm the only person who has this written down. So she's not just like, oh, everybody knows this, right? No, she said like, I'm preserving this prophecy of Joseph Smith saying, none but the women of the Latter-day Saints would be willing to bear children. Now,
wow.
Now you hear that and you're like, oh, come on. People have children. Like, what's the big deal?
No, but now I'm on my climate. This is how they protest climate change. They say the world's about to end. I would never bring a child into this cruel world. My, not fear of maturity, but my protest, my birth protest makes me strong and brave. Like the feminists are worshiping right now because she doesn't have children and she chose to be a boss babe instead. Like we have so venerated a lot of these kind of like anti-Christian tropes now into being affirmative goods that now like not having children is not perceived as a failure to launch in some circles, but is literally like an affirmative good to aspire towards, as though you're somehow more mature without children.
No, could not be more backwards.
Yes.
It's so wrong. So the first thing in the Discord we're going to look at is kind of a macro view. We're looking at where our fertility stands right now. Okay. So Mormons tend to have more children than other groups.
This is just Mormons, global fertility rates by region, right?
Not quite. This is just before that. There's a little quotation just about that. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm on that quotation right now.
This is saying that Mormons ages 40 to 59 have an average of 3.4 children in their lifetime, well above the comparable figure for all Americans at that age range, which is 2.1, and higher than any other religious group. So as it stands, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka Mormons, have way more babies. We got way more babies.
That's like a lot more babies. Like in terms of babies, 50% above average. It's like pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of babies.
It's a lot more babies.
So, but there's a couple things that are resistant. Oh, actually, let's look at the fertility rates by region. Okay, this is global fertility rates by region. Okay, this is going back for like 60, 70 years. Okay, tracking how fertility rates have changed. So each region is given a different color: Central Africa, West Africa, East Africa, North Africa, Southern Africa, Oceania, Asia, so on and so on. And you can see that back in like 1950, everybody was much more fertile, having a lot more kids.
Yes.
And then as countries develop, they drop in fertility.
Which makes you wonder, is it really development? All of this new is it westernization without secularization, or is it modernization without westernization? Is it development? Okay, keep going.
So one thing you can see right here, that red line that I drew in the middle there, is the pill. Okay. The pill was invented in the 1960s, and that had a dramatic change on fertility rates across the world. And when the pill enters a society or gets legalized in a society, you can see the fertility rate drop off precipitously. And you can see that in that graph right here. The light green that's tracking there is North America. When the pill hits, it just plummets. That red line goes, and it sinks from 3.5 all the way down to about 2-ish, and then it kind of bottoms out there too.
Wonderfully below the replacement birth rate, so that we can have this anti-human decline. The death cult can be fed slowly and surely. Okay.
And it's interesting, I'll just point out briefly here that the top 3 lines in that graph are Africa, and it didn't hit them until it looks like maybe 10 years later for 2 of them, and then for Central Africa, like 20, 30 years later.
You can see the impact that it has had just by looking at this. Now, the dotted red line with the stars, I mapped on the fertility rate specifically for North American Latter-day Saints.
Ooh.
Okay. So back in the 1960s, we were at like 4.7, 4.8, which is a lot of kids. And then it came down with the invention of the pill, but not too much. And now we're cruising at about 3.4, 3.5. So we also felt a little bit of that impact. Now, things are going on. It's not just the pill that's going on in this period. This is huge globalization and economic growth because of the post-war boom. So there's a lot that's going on here. And as people get wealthier, they tend to become less fertile. That's called pocketbook sterilization. Okay. Or pocketbook contraception. Okay. So there's pill book contraception, pocketbook contraception. Okay. Which Latter-day Saints have proven to be resistant to. This is a big deal.
So Latter-day Saints generally, as they get wealthier, they do not, their fertility rate does not drop. They keep having children because, hey, this is kind of like a moral thing, and families are the most important thing I can do, not just being a bigger and more well-promoted clerk for middle management.
Yes. So the reasons for this we're going to get to a little bit later. To sum it up, having children is not cultural for us. It's theological for us.
Okay.
It doesn't go away, no matter where you are. If you're an African Latter-day Saint, an Asian Latter-day Saint, or an American Latter-day Saint.
I thought it was just because we were hotter and we couldn't help ourselves.
Well, that helps. That helps. Let's be real, right, Luke? Luke,
but,
are you?
Well, when we just talked about the pill, that's actually not the case. You do actually make more of a conscious choice.
Luke, come on, man.
To have children. No, this is to our credit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, even if we are hotter, there's still a way you could get out of having kids, but we
were just trying to make you blush, Luke. We were just trying to make you blush.
To match the shirt, bro.
I'm not going to apologize for having a hot wife. You will never make me do that.
Right.
His tasteful salmon button up, you know? So, okay, keep going.
Okay, so pill book sterilization, pocketbook sterilization. We are resistant to it, where all other cultures, it looks like, are being eroded. Their fertility rates being eroded. Now, next is the Amish, or actually, let's look at pocketbook. Okay. Relationship between fertility and income. There's this big graph right here.
Yeah, I see it. Okay.
See this trend right here. So you're looking at total fertility rate. This is GDP per capita in USD. Okay. Held constant at 2010. So there's purchasing power parity at 2010. And you can see what happens as people make more money, they have fewer children. Okay.
And I'll just point out, so these little dots are countries. So these are like all the countries in the world is what it says. Yeah.
Yes.
And so then that US average star is right along the trend line. So trending exactly with the correlation that this chart shows between per capita and your fertility rate.
That's right. So on average, US citizens will make $76K per year and have 1.66 children. So not too great, but it depends on how much money they make, right? So if they're making less money, they tend to have more children. They make a lot of money, it tends to go down. Now, I mapped onto this with the stars, the Amish. The Amish only make $42,000 per year on average, and yet they have 7 kids on average.
Jeez.
Which is amazing.
That's
The
crazy.
Latter-day Saints make $82,000 per year. They're higher than the average for the average American, but they have more children, 3.4. So despite having more children, okay, Latter-day Saints, or despite making more money, Latter-day Saints tend to have more children. So we are resistant to pocketbook sterilization. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a big deal because this affects everybody. Now, because of this, some have predicted there's a heat map. If you want to see this red and green heat map, that predicts that by 2100 AD, basically everybody in the US will be Mormon or Amish. I love this.
Whoa, wait. So are you basically saying that just by sheer birth rate, we don't even have to have a missionary program? We will outbreed our secular competition, that the woke scolds, with all of their birth protesting and lack of fertility, will literally dwindle into ignominious defeat as we just end up birthing our way out of this? Is that what you're saying this graph shows us, my man?
Jesus Christ said, the meek shall inherit the earth. I think this is what he's talking about. Meek on the streets, meek on the streets, mean in the sheets. That's what he was talking about. So it means that eventually
I'm making that the intro. This is going to be the absolute intro to this video. I swear. Keep going.
So I think that's what he meant, because the meek, the very religious members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and our Amish brothers and sisters are the only ones having babies.
Well, here's the only thing I have to point out about this map before we go on too, is I hate to say it, but that looks like there is a Mason-Dixon line in between the freaking West and the East. That's like, looks like we're prepping for a religious war with the Amish. No, I'm just kidding. There's like,
It's true.
there's almost a civil war brewing here. Although, but
Red
the
versus
Amish are cool
green.
though, and we get along with them.
Okay, I'm
Oh, the
cringing.
Amish are super
I'm
cool.
sorry. I'm just cringing a lot because you pulled up the picture like 3 times and it only showed for like a second every time. And so I'm like cringing here. I think it's okay to just pull up the graph and let people watch it while you're talking.
Luke,
Sorry.
you're
I'm
so
sorry.
high
I'm
maintenance.
being high maintenance here.
Yeah.
I just want the audience to see this beautiful graph. It's just so beautiful.
Thank you.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to
It is
stay up
They
there
can
for a while.
pause. They can pause. You know?
Yeah, they can pause,
That's
Luke.
it. That's an undue burden. That is a cruel and unusual punishment.
Are we making reasonable accommodations?
Yes, this is 2024,
Like
people.
it's a like it's an ADA compliant podcast. You know,
Yep.
maybe some people have fat fingers and they can't press the pause button super quickly.
Now,
Don't discriminate.
before we get too triumphalist and going back to Jonah's previous graph, but we don't have to pull it up. But the trend has been going down for Latter-day Saints, and I've noticed this in General Conference there, and even BYU devotional type of things, that the church leaders are kind of starting to pin into flag, saying, "Hey, like it's going down. This is still a commandment." Like.
Really?
And and they'll kind of say like it's a bad thing.
I
Dallin
felt
H.
like
Oaks
they-
came to mind.
Oh, this is good
actually.
to hear. Okay.
Yeah. Oh man, did I just exit
It's
out?
true.
Well, yeah.
No, and
Dallin
we're
H.
gonna-
Oaks about a year and a half ago did a devotional, and a good chunk of it was like get married, have kids, and even like the
Yes.
Salt Lake Tribune, the bad headline that they could come up with for Dallin H. Oaks talk was like Dallin H. Oaks tells people they need to have more babies, and then the LGBTQ stuff he said was in the subtitle, like so they thought that was very important to highlight.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but it's not just him. I can just kind of off the top of my head, it's kind of anytime they talk about society and how it's influencing the church in a negative way, they almost always talk about a declining birth rate among members of the church.
Okay.
Yes. And we're gonna get to some of the problems with the declining birth rate. People don't realize, but so we do have a decline. We do have a decline in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are, especially in North America, we're resistant to pill book and pocketbook sterilization, but not 100%. And so you can detect this decline in our birth rate. Now, the Deseret News ran an article about this. I think it was marvelous. They asked these researchers about the trend in birth rates and things like that, and I thought this was very insightful. So from the Deseret News article, this is back in 2017. President of the demography firm Demographic Intelligence, during a panel discussion said this. He said, we're actually not seeing a huge delay in marriage in the LDS community, but we are seeing a pretty big delay in the age they have their first child. So people tend to think, oh, well, these kids, they're in Neverland, they're Peter Pans, they're not getting married when we used to get married, and they're not having as many children. And this guy says, well, actually, that's not totally true. If you really dig into it, they are getting married. It's just there's a huge delay in when they have their first child. Once they have their first child, they're off to the races. But they're waiting a long time to have that first child. Now, we all know the problem with that is that by 35, women are considered a geriatric mother.
But
Consider
also,
that.
some of that is pseudoscience as well, though. Like even Adam, what's it called? Adam Ruins Everything. He's like the epitome of woke debunker.
Yeah, right.
Even he kind of attacked that trope that it's a geriatric presidency after 35. And you, who did like my genealogy, for example, showed like multiple ancestors that crossed the ocean and like checked into Ellis Island as a 55-year-old with like a 3-year-old. So it's like this woman gave birth at like 52 or something absurd like that. So,
But if you really do the research,
a super woke Adam Ruins Everything person has a motivation to emphasize the fact that you can have children later.
well, yeah, in order to postpone it, absolutely. And
Well, I know,
100%.
but when you said even somebody who is super woke agrees with this, well, they actually have a motivation to agree with this. So it's
No,
not
that's a good point. That's
impressive
true.
that they would. Yeah, I'm just
true.
pointing that
You know,
out.
Well,
come on. Why are you raining on my parade like that, bro? Like, I thought I made up a
Luke is
great
just
point. I thought this was a
moving
good
on the
point.
party.
And then just
Party pooper.
I know.
out comes with the fire hose.
When you put me in front of data, I just turn into like a crotchety old boomer guy. It's like, no, show the graphs. No, interpret it correctly. I'm sorry.
That's
Yes,
funny.
well, you actually find when you go back and you really do your genealogy, and I encourage everybody to do this. This is a big hobby of mine and a business that my wife and I do. When you go back and you look at your genealogy, what you actually find is that over the centuries, people actually do get married about as late as they do now. It's really the Wild West of the American frontier that people coming to America. What happened was people wanted to get married as soon as they could sustain themselves. They wanted to get their children out the door as soon as their kids could sustain themselves. And America had a surplus of land. You could come here and a 17-year-old kid could get a farm. And so the marriage rate actually went, the marriage age, average age went way down when we were bursting with all this land. The new world was discovered. But in the old world, people would wait till they were like 30 years old before they'd get married. It wasn't super uncommon. And so we tend to think that everybody, back 150 years ago was getting married at 16 years old. That's not true. That was actually never true. It happened sometimes in the Wild West of America where some guy would already have a farm when he was 18 and some girl had grown up milking cows since she was 5. And so they'd say, what are we waiting for? And so they'd get married and start a family when they were young.
Okay.
So there's some misconceptions in there. Okay. So the next chart we're looking at is female schooling and fertility. So there's pill book sterilization, pocketbook sterilization, and textbook sterilization. Textbook meaning education.
Interesting. Okay.
This is the other big kind of horseman of the fertility apocalypse here, which members of the church, guess what? Resist quite well. So this is total fertility rate and female schooling. Okay. So this is years that women have completed of schooling graphed against their total fertility rate. So you see the average U.S. woman has had 7.4 years of schooling and has 1.66 children. Okay. And you see the trend. See the trend line goes down like this, right? If you look at LDS women, okay, they buck the trend quite well. They have 13 years of education and they have 3.4 children.
And that's like outlier territory on this graph.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question. Do you know what non-OECD? Oh, the graph disappeared.
Okay.
My graph. Okay. Do you know what non-OECD and OECD is in this thing? Because we have like the light blue blips and then the dark blue blips.
Yes, that's a pseudonym for a developing nation. It comes from the Organization for Economic and Cooperative Development. So,
Got it.
So it essentially just means developing.
Okay, cool. Means a new world order.
But basically, LDS women significantly higher than average U.S. women in both years of schooling and fertility.
Yes.
So that's a myth.
So despite being, so the things that drag down your fertility is wealth, contraception, like the pill, and education.
Okay.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints manages to resist all three of those amazingly well.
Well, not resist wealth or education, but resist the trend that if you are wealthy, that you still have children, or if you're educated. Because I'm looking at this graph, I'm going to put it back up again. I'm actually super proud. Look, the average LDS woman has 13 years of education, while the average U.S. woman only has 7.4. And they're always trying to just characterize and mischaracterize LDS women as like these, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, stay at home, abused women, when in reality, they're straight up crushing it. And the outlier of education, at least in North America here, or wherever this graph is, that's seriously impressive, man.
I'm assuming this is I'm assuming this is North America for education.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, probably not Africa.
Cool.
The only people who think that Latter-day Saint women are uneducated are people who've never talked to a Latter-day Saint woman. Latter-day Saint women are, first of all, way more beautiful, way harder working, tougher women, and better educated women than any y'all's women. And they were, since the beginning. We had the vote first. The very first federal delegates who were women, Utah sent the very first federal delegates to Washington, D.C. who were women. We have the best women in the world. Sorry.
Jonah,
all your other women.
Jonah, come on. I got to stop you right there. I have watched 5 YouTube shorts from John DeLynn. So I know for a fact that what you're saying is just completely just completely wrong, okay?
Yeah, and John DeLynn and his great intellect. No, compared to our women, my grandmother graduated from University of Utah in like the 20s. She would mop the floor with John DeLynn. But so
my mom graduated like 5 years before my dad did.
Yeah. Our women totally get educated. And then, so what you're seeing here, guys, is that as people become wealthy and technology enables them and they become educated, they lose their fertility rate, is what happens to them. Okay. Except for Latter-day Saint families. Latter-day Saints, despite making more money and being more educated and having the means, choose to have children anyways. That's what you're seeing. And so it bucks that trend. All right. So the best predictor of unmet fertility desire is a delay in childbearing. Okay. So if you wait too long to have children, you end up unable to, because you kind of reach the end of your fertility span. And you have these doctors who are sitting down with women all the time and saying, you can't have children, you're too old.
Well, also health happens like that. I tell a lot of my friends, I say, look, I was a young man once upon a time too. I thought I was going to be young forever. I had no idea that in my mid 30s, I would get diagnosed with 85-year-old man leukemia. Yeah, right, like the type of leukemia I have is usually a secondary cancer that men who have already like overcome another type of cancer got as like a result of chemotherapy or something like that. It's extremely rare that a man in his mid 30s gets diagnosed with the type of leukemia that I have. And it sucks because now, dude, baby batter's radioactive. No more kids for me and Brittany until this is already treated. And I might be on that medication for the rest of my life. So baby making years is done. You know, she had 4 pregnancies. 2 of them resulted in our beautiful, lovely children. Unfortunately, she had a couple of miscarriages as well. Yeah. And so it's like, we might just have our 2 kids for the rest of our life simply as a function of time. I would have loved to have had 1 more year where we could have a healthy baby had we gotten married just simply 9 months earlier, 12 months earlier or something. Yeah, exactly.
We'll get to kind of the moral of the story, but I think one of the morals of the story is, guess what? You're never ready to have kids. Newsflash. You're never, ever ready to have kids.
Ready is a lie.
You think someday, ready is a lie. You think someday you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, we have nothing to do today. Let's have kids. Like, that's not going to happen. You are never ready. No. When you're 21, if you're married, you're just as ready as you're going to be when you're 31 or 41 or 51. You might as well have babies then. Like, you're never ready.
You're actually more ready when you're young because at least you're physically able to withstand the physical rigors of childbirth, because it doesn't get physically easier as older as you get older. It might be
right.
you might be a little bit more emotionally prepared, especially if you've been through it already. But like, it is not at all physically easier. And let me tell you, you need the physical.
Yes,
you need the physical.
Those baby seats, those car seats are so heavy.
No, the real thing is trying to buckle them in. You get all your stretches and like flexing weird muscles trying to buckle this thing into the car. I have no idea why someone hasn't patented something that will just buckle the car seat in and not have to do this whole like.
Right. Okay, but
maybe we need to invent that, the WardRadio car seat. You can actually buckle it in less than 30 seconds.
Get it from WardRadio. So you give them a discount depending on how many kids they have.
Yes, exactly.
If this is your fourth child, 40% off. But we're kind of getting into the micro. Okay, so we want to stay macro for just a minute. All right. So this from the Washington Post I find fascinating. I want everybody to look at this and just kind of chew on this for a little bit. This says only children stay steady while zero-child families become the norm. Okay, so the misconception is that people are all, especially LDS people, are just having fewer children. And when you look at a huge population like that, and you look at, here's 10,000 families, and here's all the babies they have, so you look at it and you go, oh, there's a downward trend. Everyone is just having fewer babies. That's kind of what you think, right?
Yeah.
But actually, that's not true, okay? What this graph shows is that the people who do have babies are still having babies. They're fine with it. It's people who get married and decide to go to zero. They're not family people to begin with. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the whole population, the people who are having the children keep on, they're not having fewer.
Is it all right if we just talk through this like one at a time?
Yes, please.
So it looks like from... And if the graph could stay up, please. Sorry. Okay. So people who have 5+ kids has gone from 10%, but then it seemed to drop around to like 2% in 1990, and then it stayed steady the whole time. Okay.
Yeah,
then
so
people
really
who have had
no change in the past 35 years for that.
People who have 4 kids did the same thing. It was about 10% and it dropped, but that was in like 1990. And then for the past 35 years, it stayed practically the same. People who have 3 kids has slowly slid from 20% to about 13% over the past 50 years. People who have had 1 kid has actually increased, but not much. Over the past 50 years, it's gone from 15% to about 20% in 95 and then stayed steady. So kind of that same staying steady after 1995. But then when we get to 2 kids, it kind of did like a little arc and went from about 27% up to 30, but now it's slid down starting around about 2000 to 25%. So you see a little bit slide down in 2 kids, but 1 child has slowly been increasing, especially since 2010. And since 2010 has rapidly jumped from...
No, that's 0.
Zero. Yeah, sorry. 0 kids has rapidly jumped from about, actually like the birth of the iPhone, from the birth of Instagram being able to show your friends all the cool places you've traveled. I'm just going to put that forward as a theory, has jumped from about 27% to 35% over the past about 15 years.
Yeah, if you cover up the first 10 years of this graph with your finger, if you kind of cover it up, everything's pretty much flat except the zeros. The couples who are married and don't want to have kids used to be much smaller, and then just in the past 10 years shot up, to the highest.
Cool.
I'm so fascinated by this. It's like correlates with the birth, like the phone. The phone is what did it. Like phones, the screen actually generation. Not even the phones, but the selfie. Because the iPhone was kind of like 2008. The selfie came in more around 2012, and Instagram and all that stuff. And that's when the zeros just start shooting up.
So you actually think
that's fascinating.
You think there's pillbox infertility, pocketbook infertility, education infertility, and now Luke Hansen here,
Instagram infertility.
Yeah, has just coined
serious.
The selfie infertility or Instagram infertility. Wow,
no, this is the thing. This is called so. Economists, which I'm ashamed to admit I'm related to some of them, cold-blooded economists call this, and I don't like consumer. That what they do is they say children are a consumer product. They're a
They're a luxury good now. No, marriage is a luxury good, and so are children. It's like you show off your wealth by having kids.
So when you have a lot of material, you have a lot of stuff, you tend to not want kids as much because you afford nice cars or nice houses or whatever. They say that people, when they think about children, they think about it with the same brain muscles as they think about having consumer goods.
That is so sick. Now, I would say, Luke, kind of in regards to your kind of surprise over this graph, what this immediately reminded me of, and maybe once again, this is me just bringing my trauma to the table, right? Having dealt with opposition forces for so long and so hard. But one of the common tropes against Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is, oh, you guys are only 10% better in the average marriage. For all your talk about eternal families and eternal marriage and temple marriage, Mormons are only hanging around at 55%, while the average population, divorce rate is like 65%. You're not that much better. You're all just a bunch of hypocrites. But when you actually dive into the data, the people that drive the divorce rate down are the people that get married and divorced multiple times. But the people that actually stay married, especially those that have a temple marriage, the success rate is like 75 to 85%, depending on, the region. But those who are, I don't know, I call them charlatans, playboys, gold diggers, whatever, those that actually get married and divorced multiple times, they're the ones that drive the marriage rate down to 55.
You're right.
But you're still so much better off if you get married, even in the secular American society at large, because that's what we are now. It's 53% secular. It's majority secularized. Okay. But even in the regular majority of society, you're better off getting married. And in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints specifically, you're definitely much better off getting married. But that one group drives all of the stats down, similar to how it looks like those that went from, less than 20% to more than 35% are driving these stats down as well.
Yes. So if you tease it out, and you separate kind of this is what they did with this study, which I think is awesome. This is the Census Bureau's Current Population Survey Fertility Supplement, or IPUMS, Department of Data. At the Washington Post, they separated them out, right? And they said, okay, what this suggests is that if people want kids, they want more than one. But otherwise, children seem to be a multiple or nothing proposition. If you're going to have kids, if you're going to be a family person, you're going to have a big family. You're going to have more than one kid. Like, that's not the problem. It isn't the fives having fours and then the fours having threes and so on and so on. It's that more people are just saying, I want zero. That's what's happening. It's not smaller families. It's fewer families.
Oh, that's so sad.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's I thought that was fascinating because we messed that up a lot.
It's so fascinating that comes around social media time. That's so fascinating. What other big thing happened in the world apart from Instagram in about 2012 that made that zero number start shooting up?
Well, there's a lot of people that actually say streaming services. I
Netflix
think,
and chill.
I was about to say, like basically porn and Netflix, hence the joking term, Netflix and chill, started their streaming services.
But TV was around before then.
Yeah, but TV
porn was around before then.
But you still had delayed.
Oh, no, it wasn't. No way, man. Not to that.
I know.
I hear this from older people that say, "Oh, we've always had those temptations." Like, oh no, you have not. You one click and you can be in a free world.
I know too, but it didn't pop up with the smartphone. It popped up with social media on the smartphone. If you look at the graph. That's when it started shooting up.
Well, no, also streaming services. Like streaming services really went live in a way that our broadband system could handle it in about 2013 and 2014 is when streaming really started taking off. Okay. It was a technological possibility, but it was not mainstream really until about then as well. And the difference is the delayed gratification. I remember literally trying to walk home on time so that I could get Adam West's Batman and RoboCop on Nickelodeon and Fox 13 in South Pasadena, California, when I had to walk home from school, and that was the schedule. And when the Super Bowl was coming on at 8 p.m., I remember my dad literally like trying to make sure we got to the Super Bowl party on time because there was none of this pausing. There was no TiVo. If you missed the opening, you were screwed. And so you had to alter your life in a way that was kind of more analog still. Though it was a digital service, it was still kind of an analog attitude, if that makes sense. So,
hold on. But what is the connection between streaming service and having less kids?
Indulgence. It took it from a social sphere where it's almost like the difference between going to a movie theater or just being able to go and stream a movie yourself. Usually if you're going to go to a theater, you might as well make a social aspect out of it. You know, so there's a tendency to go in groups. There's a tendency to plan it with others. It ends up becoming a catalyst for sociability, whereas streaming becomes a catalyst for not individuality, but becomes a catalyst for isolation. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but that has been linked. I've read the books. I've read The Anxious Generation. Okay. This is a lot more linked to social media.
You think so? Well, also porn stars able to publicize their services on social media.
But it's not that, because these are like married people. These are couples and how many children that they're having, right? Okay. Only children stay steady. Number of times women have given birth in a lifetime. Number of times women have given birth in a lifetime. So it's not couples. Yeah. I see. But
that's the only way to track fertility is.
Yeah. The point remains, people who are married and travel around a lot and are posting on Instagram all the time, they could be having plenty of sex. Like, that's not the problem. It's like the birth control of intentionally not having kids because there's this motivating force of I'm posting this thing for all my friends.
Well, so also, I was going to say also the girls. You go.
I was going to say, just so that people know, the amount of pornography consumed on the internet doubled from 2006 to 2010. That is the great spike. You can see it in the graphs. Mm-hmm. It grew more in that 5-year period than any time before or since. That was the apocalyptic explosion of pornography on the internet. It was right at 2006 to about 2010, 2012. That's when it just took off, according to Google. So,
which is interesting. Yeah,
I know I know that Japan is having a problem with their young people not wanting to have a mate because they just can sit at home all day and have it digitally. And I think that is the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Japan is in huge trouble. Japan is in massive trouble.
Massive trouble.
Because there's
China.
Yeah, we're doing more of a religious side to this, but there are major economic problems. And this is my thing. You know, there's people that are, we shouldn't pressure people, and it's an individual choice, and we need to respect everybody's decision, and some people's lives look different for each other. To an extent, I'm like, if you couldn't get married, if you're infertile for whatever reason, Cardin's already touched on this. Joy was I think every woman kind of is worried, like, maybe I'll be infertile at some point.
Oh, sure.
So I don't want them to feel undue pressure, but there still should be that expectation. And just an understanding, like, we don't even need a lot of artificial social pressures to be put in place. We just need people to acknowledge the basic facts. Look, if you decide to not have children, you are imposing an economic burden on society 30 years down the road. I know for a fact.
Get Social Security. You don't have children? No Social Security for you.
I know for a fact that when you're in your 40s, you know, these 20-something-year-olds that are like, children, whatever, I want to go to France, I want to do this. I know for a fact when you're in your 40s and you go to whoever the Taylor Swift equivalent is then, when you are waking up the next morning to go back to the to go back to the airport to fly back, you want to stop by a coffee shop and have a 16-year-old be making a nice, cheap caramel latte diet, whatever they call these things nowadays. You want that. And so out of respect for the people who are actually going to be making the babies that can be in that Starbucks 30 years in the future when you're going to get your caramel latte after your Taylor Swift concert, you need to at least acknowledge I just need acknowledgement right now.
Yeah.
Now
we
Luke,
could talk about Social Security and all that other stuff, but we need to just acknowledge right now the parent is doing more for society than you are traveling the world, not having kids. Okay?
Yes,
absolutely.
And you can make your personal decisions and all that kind of stuff, and we don't need the government to force people and ban birth control and all that stuff, but just the acknowledgement. Please, these are not equivalent choices.
Okay.
These are not equally good propositions.
Okay, now I can handle this from you, Luke, because I know that you're a hardworking guy and that you're an upstanding citizen and everything like that. But where I get really, really tired is when I hear this from older people, shaming the younger people, saying, why aren't you having more kids? Well, let me tell you, the average age of first-time home purchase was just released as 47 years old. It used to be 29, and no young man is going to view himself as able to take care of a family until he really has a house and a job. And previous generations have so woefully abandoned and greedily sucked up the resources and ruined the economies.
And gotta have those RVs.
Yeah, especially the housing markets. Whenever I hear somebody of a different generation say this, my mind was changed by Cody, my assistant at the radio station. He's, I think I met him late 20s. He's probably early 30s now. And I was kind of having a little boomer rant about, why are people failing to launch? Video games, it's killing the fertility rate. Porn, it's killing, and I was having the moan, just like, I don't know, a woman in the late 80s saying, well, it's MTV that's the real cause of the problem, not the Christian rights divorce epidemic making all the kids, not happy, shall we say. So I was having my little rant, and he said, Cardin, I think I have an alternative perspective on this. I was like, okay, cool, hit it. I love alternative perspectives. And he says, maybe all these guys are staying at home and playing video games and not engaging in society because they've already realized that it's not worth it and there is no future in it.
They've given up.
And I got to tell you, we are forcing men via shame. We have forced an entire generation to go and get $100,000 into student loan debt for a degree that doesn't matter, to graduate into a job force that doesn't want to pay them anything more than $3 above minimum wage. And then we're saying to buy a house, it costs $1 million.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
The CBO came out with the stats. The two most expensive states are one that I live in. There's Hawaii, where we've priced out the entire Hawaiian kingdom, and the indigenous people there are priced out of paradise. Unless you're making $209,000 a year, you cannot afford the median home income of a home in Hawaii. And in California, it's $192,000 a year is how much money you need to make in order to be able to afford a completely average home. We're not even talking about a baller home here. We're talking about, 1,500 to 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. So you can have a couple of kids and a wife. That's completely unaffordable now. And you need to be making, when you do the math, to be making that much money, you need to be making $120, $130, $140 an hour. Boomers aren't getting out of the way so that the young guys can get promoted. And they're sitting there shaming us, all saying, well, why don't you have 7 kids by now? When I was your age, shut up. At your age, a home cost $20,000 and you made $10,000 a year. A home was only double your yearly income. Now the yearly income is $72,000 a year on average, but homes don't cost $140K. They cost $1.4 million. It's 20 years of salary, and you're always on the edge of your life being ruined. These young men, they're not stupid. You want to know why they're not dating? Because they saw what happened to their brother. They saw their brother go up and ask a girl out, and she called him a creep. She took a picture of it on Snapchat. She blew him up, and there's kids committing suicide for how these girls treat them on freaking line. And like, hell no, I ain't doing that. I'm going to stay at home and play with my buddies. And then on top of it, economically, they're like, oh crap, I can go to college and ruin my life with debt the government won't let me even default or get bankrupt on in case it fails. This will literally follow me my entire life. Or I could take the risk on a house and watch 2008 happen again, where everybody was upside down on their homes, and completely ruin me with debt I cannot escape the rest of my life. If you talk to a girl, you're screwed and ruined for the rest of your life. Nobody will hire you because you got called a creep online. You buy a house, you're screwed the rest of your life. So why not just be a waiter? that has a girlfriend that's willing to sleep with you for a while because you're charismatic enough that you can get a girlfriend for 2 or 3 years, but then she realizes you're not going anywhere. So she dates the older guy that already has a house. You know what I'm saying? And you just stay at home with your Xbox and your bottle of wine. Like, yeah. I'm not saying that's what I would do, but I'm saying the middle class man has been so squeezed. I kind of see why he indulges in the coping mechanism.
I see it.
You're not wrong. The data kind of bears this out from the National Association of Realtors. The average age to buy a home was 31 years old in 1981. It's now 47 years old.
Yeah.
That's a 50% increase in one generation. That's ridiculous. So what you're saying has merit.
I totally agree with both of you. And being somebody who's just moved to San Antonio and is currently living at my in-laws' house. Actually, I haven't lived there yet because I flew right out of here before I even got there. But point being, in the middle of trying to find a house right now, I know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe even more than you know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. But there's two sides to this. And you're talking about how the boomers ruin everything and all that. It's the millennials that were voting for all this.
Oh, true.
The boomers did not elect Obama. Okay?
Oh,
that's true.
They were the largest. No, boomers were the largest voting bloc until 4 years ago.
Yeah. But when you look at what they were voting for versus what the millennials were voting for, it's my own generation, I blame a lot for being stupid.
Fair enough.
And if you look at the very bottom of the Discord, I can just read this off. We don't have to go and pull it up.
No, I'm pulling it up, baby. I'm pulling it up for
average home sizes. 1920 was slightly over 1,000 square feet. Slightly over 1,000 square feet. 2014, 2,600 square feet. A 260% increase in the average home size.
But that's also because only the wealthy could afford it, so it was going to be bigger. The starter home...
No.
Yeah, the starter home was...
No, this is the average, Cardin. So we're talking average. So even if the wealthy person is buying really big homes, nobody is forcing the contractors to only make bigger homes. If there's a market for smaller homes, minus government intervention, which there has been a lot of, and that's a whole nother conversation that's not really apropos to this conversation, but the standards of people have gone up. I mean, sure, you'll have these 23-year-olds complaining about, oh, you can't find housing, you can't do this, and we can't do that. And then you're like, there's some 1,000 square foot home. Like, I can't even fit my this and this and that in his 1,000 square feet. I'm going to have, my children, I might have 3 children in one bedroom. Is this the Stone Ages, And you get that kind of sentiment from people. And so home prices have dramatically increased, and it's infuriating, and it didn't need to happen. I totally get that. But if you look at overall standard of living, the real wages versus food and all that other stuff has gone up dramatically. And so economically speaking, somebody in the 1930s, 1940s, when the birth rate was still very high, was economically better overall. I mean, economically worse off overall today compared to back then. It's really only the housing prices that have gone up dramatically.
Okay,
let's get back to the topic, though.
Yeah. I know we want to talk about which generation is to blame for things. I know.
I got my fix. We can move on. I got my fix.
Me too. We can move on.
There's still more. Now, what I want to get through to people, I wish that I could get this through to people, okay, is that people having fewer children doesn't just mean fewer baristas making your Starbucks at an airport. Population decline is the most inexorable, unstoppable, and catastrophic cataclysm you could ever imagine. Having a meteorite strike the earth and kill half the population would be way easier and way more fun and way quicker than death by population decline. Population decline is the worst thing you could ever imagine. There's a wonderful book by Daryl Bricker and John Ibbotson called Empty Planet. It talks about global population decline. Now, the worst part about global population decline is that you don't know it until it's over. You can't stop it. Once it starts, it's too late. So by the time this book was written a few years ago, it's already too late. Okay. The negative effects of population decline are listed here. Now, these sound a little innocuous when you read them, but I want you to really try to internalize how bad these are. Okay. So the detrimental effects of population decline are kind of enumerated here in this list here. a rise in the dependency ratio that increases economic pressure on the workforce, loss of culture, diminishment of trust among citizens. That is a huge thing. Diminishing trust means no one's investing, no one's giving loans or taking out loans, no one's selling things. You have to have a contract to get your garbage taken out. Okay. It slows everything down, makes life horrible. A crisis and end to life care, because you're going to have way more elderly than you do young. Funding entitlement programs is the one everybody talks about. And that is a huge deal. That's a huge deal. That's not even, I don't think makes the top 5 of the worst things that can happen. Military strength declines because young people fight wars, and young men specifically. Decline in innovation, since change comes from the young. Sorry, that's science. A strain on mental health caused by a permanent recession. Now, this is a funny line. Mm-hmm. Mental health because of permanent recession. Sorry, did you just say permanent recession? Imagine a permanent recession. Okay, remember that in the Middle Ages, people lived in Europe in the shadow of Roman ruins. They looked up at these columns and these beautiful buildings that they did not have the technology to even repair for centuries.
Wow. I didn't really think about that. Yeah. And Elon Musk says technology does not have a tendency to be innovated. It has a tendency to be lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we experience. In the Middle Ages, Europe sat for hundreds of years looking up at what used to be and thinking, I wouldn't even know how to repair the thing, let alone rebuild the thing. Okay. So that's, imagine how horrible.
When you're talking about mental health, this was something my sister did. She took psychology, and when you're older and you actually have something to do, you live a lot longer. When it's like, I'm retired and now I just have fun, like biologically have fun is not built into our system. Okay. Right. So you actually, your body's like motivated to die and get out of the way.
Yes.
To make the people that are actually being productive. So people who have children, somebody like Russell M. Nelson, who still has, well, first the presider leadership over the church, that really helps you stay alive longer, to still have some sort of responsibility, but then also your family. To be at the head, a patriarch or matriarch in a family, and be in the lives of your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, that is immensely psychologically beneficial, especially to old people, and helps them live longer and feel more fulfilled. And so not only do you have a strain on mental health caused by the economy going down, but just a strain on mental health that you have no future that you are invested in. And when you have no future that you are invested in, what's the point of you sticking around longer?
Yeah, retirement at age 62 increases the odds of dying by 23%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeez.
Those who retire at 55 have had a 37% higher chance of death at 65 than those who don't. So retirement is one of the best ways to accelerate your death, is to retire.
Yeah,
so
well, it's interesting to say that.
People.
Like, if you look at the demographics of Germany, I remember when I was there filming at Babelsberg Studios, I became friends with a lot of local Germans, and one of them had 2 kids. But he actually ended up having a 3rd kid, and he was like, oh, this was kind of a surprise, but a beautiful thing. We welcome it. And then he jokingly said, I also welcome the tax benefits. They're so desperate for children in Germany. Look at the stat. Due to the low birth rate, Germany has recorded more deaths than births every year since 1972, which means 2021 was the 50th consecutive year that the German population would have decreased without immigration. The whole reason why Kreuzberg is full of Muslims is because they brought them in because they had to import and immigrate labor to build their big, beautiful train station there, and then they didn't want to leave because, oh, hey, we like all these cool goodies of the developed world. But also, frankly, all the older Germans are kind of like, oh, yeah, well, we need that guy at Starbucks, and all of our wokeism hasn't produced enough babies, so maybe this is a good idea. And the hilarious part is they haven't been able to even illegally immigrate their way out of their population collapse since 1972. Like, that's how detrimental the pillbox, the education, contraception, the Instagram intervention, like Luke calls it, and then the 4th one I'm forgetting, it's the pocketbook. the pocketbook contraception is, since 1972, they've recorded more deaths than they have recorded births. You want to talk permanent recession and decline? There it is, right there.
Yep. Now, there's one other little blurb that this talks about, and this helps you get kind of in the mindset of what it would be like. Okay, it says, what happens in rural areas? Imagine you're in a small town. I live in kind of rural area. Imagine a rural area. One day they close the supermarket, and it's not because the supermarket owner is evil. It's just because to run a supermarket, you need enough people. And suddenly there isn't enough people in the county to justify the large supermarket. Once the supermarket closes, people have to drive to the next city, or the little small local markets, the prices go up everywhere. So now everybody in the city, because they didn't have enough 16-year-old baggers at the grocery store, have to pay more for their goods. So they're motivated to move away. And the more people move away, the faster it collapses. When you have a football team, imagine that the entire planet is a football team, okay? You lose an offensive lineman, and you think, or defensive lineman, you think, whatever, lost a defensive lineman. Like, that's not a big deal. Or an offensive lineman. That's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Now you have a big hole in the line. Now everyone's exposed. That quarterback is toast, okay? Having one that, like, everybody kind of works together to keep this machine going. And it isn't like everyone's doing the same job and it slowly drains like a bathtub draining water. It's like you have a hole over here and the whole thing becomes unstable and collapses. Population decline is cataclysmic. And I don't think people realize, and this is what Elon Musk has been trying to raise the alarm about, is that people, you can't imagine. You think hurricanes are bad? You think a hurricane's bad? You have no idea how bad a hurricane of population.
And we're
decline
missing
is
such an opportunity here as a church. Like, if we had wise leaders that were running us instead of bureaucrats that were managing our decline, we would be screaming from the rooftops. We need workforce housing, just like we had a perpetual immigration fund and perpetual education fund. And just like we kicked into high gear for all these other physical needs that we had, we would literally be birthing babies like crazy until the Western United States was basically populated by the Mormons, just like you have the Amish basically populating, in this first graph that you showed, the entire Eastern United States.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
And we would say, fine. No, we welcome wokeism. No, let's build all the Planned Parenthoods that you guys want. Let's build all of the, woke institutions. Oh yeah, no, everybody should be a gender studies major. In fact, we should start an elementary school because we're going to homeschool our kids, and you guys can just all go sterilize yourselves. And no kids, boss babe it and go travel Europe, dude. We should literally just be encouraging our competition to boss babe and travel to Europe, because that's fine. The one kid you were going to have, that's fine. I'll just have an extra. In fact, I'll just have an extra 2 because my church is going to be like straight up building me a house.
This has been policy proposals by WardRadio here.
Yes, exactly.
We encourage all representatives to so some countries have figured this out. That they're like, it's like, I can't believe people aren't hip to this. But some countries figure that they go, our population is declining. We are all doomed, not just like, someday there won't be any Danish people. No, like you will have no retirement. You will work till the day you die. You will collapse on the floor of your factory in order to make enough money to buy food from the only farm left in Eastern Germany, because that's what will happen with population decline. Like, some countries are figuring this out. I have here a little snippet of what some countries have tried to do to incentivize fertility.
Is this the montage of pictures you have where there's Peter Costello, treasurer of Australia, saying,
yes,
one for mum, one for dad, and one for Australia? I love how he turned out to be like, that was a horrible Australian accent. You know what I'm saying?
But these guys, this is what they do. So Australia is kind of figuring this out. The Do It for Denmark, or Do It for Mom. Did you ever see this one?
No.
It's a bit risque, but it's Do It for Denmark. And basically it says, it's targeting grandparents, and it says, do you want to have a grandbaby, but your kids won't have children? Here's how you get them to have babies. You send them on love cruises. And so the nation of Denmark
these are like taxpayer subsidized.
Listen up. This was genius. They said, we will help fund and give tax breaks to, and they had these tourist companies were saying, hey, we're going to help with this. And you go on this cruise, you send your kids on this cruise. They're married, send them on this cruise, and it increases the chances that they're going to have children and they had all these stats. They're like, if it's warm outside, if it's to a tropical place, if it's longer than 3 days, if it's if there's alcohol, like all these things. And they said, if you do that, they're more likely to have babies. So the commercial is all these like grandparents who are like, have fun on your cruise. And then they're holding a baby. It's hilarious. Okay.
Please tell me there's a link for this commercial.
Well, I guess we do have to point out our birth rate is that high and we don't drink alcohol at all. That's kind of impressive.
It's true.
It's even more
so that's
impressive.
The end. That's the end we're going to get to. Okay, but so all these things, the Russians did it. They said we're going to have a procreation day. Not kidding. Not kidding. The nation declared a procreation day, a national holiday for everybody to go make babies.
Oh, and there's prizes. I've heard about. I don't know if this was Russia specifically, but I do remember if you have your baby, like here's 9 months before we're announcing this, and then if you have your baby, whoever has it closest to noon at this hospital gets the $5,000, and then whoever has it within 1 day gets like $1,000, and then yeah.
Now they've studied these campaigns here, and there's a little research study here.
Okay,
and they say that essentially that the news is that very few things actually work. Very few gimmicks work. They said the contribution of cash benefits is the highest in over half of the countries worldwide. The contribution of relevant the contribution of relevant services and in-kind expenditure is highest in 29% of the countries. Tax incentive expenditures, 14% of the countries. Okay. So it's saying cash does pretty well. That these other gimmicks, like countries have struggled with this. It is not working well. It's not working well.
It's like my friend in Germany that said, I welcome the child, but boy, do I also welcome these cash benefits, because the tax benefits that Germany gives in trying to combat this, they all but pay you. They literally all but pay you. I think the birth is free. There's like a $2,000 credit on your next year's taxes. Like you don't pay taxes until they're in kindergarten, pretty much, if I understand correctly. It's kind of like the child dependent tax credit in the US, but on steroids in German, especially for naturally born citizens.
I have a policy that needs to happen. I think this needs to happen. Okay. Children equals votes.
Yes.
So,
I totally agree.
Yes.
Totally agree.
And when you think about it, people are like, that's absolutely crazy. And then when you ask them, well, why? Like, really, the only explanation is that children aren't fully humans yet, or like something like, because children are, if they're born in the country, they're citizens of the country. They have an investment in the country, and that's who we give the voting rights to, is to the actual citizens of the country who are invested in it. So it makes perfect sense that children should have a say, but they're not at, age of accountability. They can't make the decisions for themselves yet. And the parents have responsibility for everything else. You will get legally in trouble if you do not fulfill responsibilities for clothing, food, shelter, and at the very least don't abuse them. But the expectation is to psychologically nurture them.
Yeah.
And so you have all these responsibilities. It only makes sense for the responsibility of the parent to also be to represent their child in the public sphere for expressing the child's interest in the future of the country. And every child should get a vote. And until a certain age, maybe it's 16, maybe it's 18, probably whatever age they can serve in the military and on jury duty, you make that the same age as when they can start voting. Prior to that, the votes go to the parents. If the parents are split or divorced, the parents have to agree on it. Both parents have to agree on where the child's vote is going. That's how we would do this. So if the parents are divorced and the mom is a raging liberal and the dad is a raging conservative MAGA dude, and they have one child, maybe they just don't vote because they can't agree. Or maybe they agree, sure, Assemblyman X, we do President Kamala versus Trump, we can't agree, so that vote's just not going to go out to the child. If they have two children, they can say, well, I'll vote for Johnny, you can vote for Susie. And it can work, and it makes perfect sense. Why in the world should children not be represented at the polling booth?
So here's what would happen. Here's what would happen. There's a meme in the Discord, the back of a car, a little decal, Mormon great grandparents be like, like 50 votes is what that would turn into.
All right, well, we got to wrap this up, man. Hit us.
That's the only point against it would be that the political party that shall not be named that people who don't have children largely support would be extremely against it. And so it'd be very hard to put that as a law.
We got to get to the point. Here's the point of the whole thing, okay?
Okay.
There's a little graphic that I put in there that shows Joseph Smith and some arrows and a copy of the Book of Mormon card. And make sure.
Got it. It's here. It's on the screen.
So if this is a marriage that Joseph Smith performed, and it's down here at the bottom, I'm going to read it, okay? You both mutually agree to be each other's companion, husband and wife, observing the legal rights belonging to this condition, that is, giving yourselves wholly for each other and from all others during your lives. And when they have answered yes, he shall pronounce them husband and wife in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and by virtue of the laws of the country, according to the authority vested in him, may God add his blessing and keep you to fulfill your covenants and henceforth and forever. Amen. Now, did you notice what's not in there?
Yes.
Eternity, sealing, exaltation, children, families, not in there. Now, the Bickertonites, the Strangites, and Michelle Stone all agree with this, with Joseph Smith. And yet they all end with till death do you part. They all end with, just like every other Christian, families aren't eternal. They're not part of their theology. But if you trace Brigham Young, Eliza R. Snow, David O. McKay, Gordon B. Hinckley, you lead to the family. People don't realize that our doctrines surrounding eternal families were not developed in 1830. They were developed between 1850 and 1950. The reason we're the most family-oriented church on the planet is because Brigham Young and Eliza R. Snow and our forebears in the late 19th century
continuing revelation is what you're saying.
Continuing revelation. It was not there. Okay. So now what we want to do in the church is put everything on Joseph Smith because he was the greatest prophet ever, but we want to put everything on him and say he created everything from day one. But he didn't. And our doctrine of eternal families actually has more, owes more to Brigham Young than it does to Joseph Smith. Okay, I just want to put that out there for all the haters so that it drives up our algorithm with all the hate comments that we're going to get.
I noticed that for the first time now, you put Michelle Stone up there. That's kind of savage right there,
Well, Michelle
bro.
Stone doesn't believe in eternal families. She doesn't believe in temple sealings. She doesn't believe in any of that.
Oh, is that because of the infamous going to the temple as a golden calf comment is what you're saying? Is that now? I haven't seen that, but I've gotten a lot of emails asking to debunk it, so I am unfamiliar with this commentary. However, people that I trust have said it's gone sour away from the temple. That the hatred of Brigham Young has not just resulted in a hey, let's contextualize polygamy argument, but it's now kind of become a hey, let's throw out the baby. But the bathwater is with the baby is Brigham Young is continuing revelation about families.
Right.
So the logical conclusion would now be instead of eternal families, but till death do us part. Is that what you're saying?
And that's where they end up. Our restoration cousins all end up with till death do you part. Only one of them has eternal families and is the most family-oriented church in the world. It's not the Bickertonites. It's not the Church of Christ Temple lot. It's us. It's Brigham. It's the Brighamites. I just want to throw that out there just to needle Michelle Stone a little bit. But so
I'm going to send Josh Gailey your number, and then he can send you hate text messages.
Yes, well, this is what they say. So guys, listen, this is what they say.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to edit that one out. I'll edit that one out.
But this is what they respond with. They say, there's no need for sealings. We're all going to be together anyways. What's the big deal? Okay. Now, and that's what they all say. Well, guess what? The guys who've been saying that for 100 years, your fertility rate is abysmal. Okay. It's abysmal. So you say that you believe families are just as important as we are, but the data don't lie. And your guys' fertility rate is dropping like a stone. And our fertility rate is still stronger because fertility is baked into our religion. Having sex, having babies, lots of times is baked into our theology from the very beginning. And it is not in the theology of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, any of that stuff. We have it in spades. Somebody once said, this is Sean McCraney. He said, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he probably said, the Mormons. That's what he says. He says, the Mormons are just a pagan sci-fi fertility cult. And I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds about right, actually. I think you kind of nailed that. So what I want to do
awesome.
here,
Take it. We're taking back the slander.
so what I want to do for all the heads of state out there who subscribe to Ward Radio. I know Xi Jinping is listening to this. He's a huge fan of the show. I know that all those guys are listening to this. There's one flyer I put in the Discord card and towards the bottom called The Benefits of the Mormons. Okay.
Okay, cool.
The benefits of the Mormons. So this is what, if you let our religion into your country, if you were to, I don't know, like parachute down pallets full of copies of the Book of Mormon from airplanes onto the heads of your citizens. Okay. This is some of the benefits that you might get. Population restoration. We're all about restoration. Okay. Multiply and replenish the earth from Genesis 1:28. We're big on this, guys. We have a proven track record of this. Okay. Nobody makes babies as well as we do. We can restore your population. No alcohol needed. No alcohol needed, guys.
Funny.
Okay? Think of the money you'll save. All right. And when Reverend Al Green can't do it for you, we Mormons can. Okay.
That's
Reverend
funny.
Al Green, if he's not getting your population in the mood, just send him a copy of the Book of Mormon that can do it. So we can restore your population. Look, Xi Jinping, you got a major problem. China's going down the tubes with the population decline. And there's an answer right in front of you. Okay. Right.
Also, there was a couple of graphs. There was a couple of graphs that are Republican operative here. You know what I'm saying? I noticed that he put in the graph.
We actually need to talk about the theology a little more here.
Oh, okay.
Because we have the doctrine of an actual Father in heaven, not a metaphorical Father in heaven, not this is the best way to think about God type of Father in heaven, an actual Father in heaven who is training us, his children, to become like him. And so what's just awesome about the gospel that I've thought about for a couple of years now is the fact that everyday life is training you for the eternities, for exaltation. And so in the rest of Christianity, children, I'm sure they believe that children kind of help you get closer to God, help you get closer to Christ. But really, that Jesus prayer that you say is where it really happens, where salvation really happens. And that's the only point you're coming to earth for. For us, it's like a training ground to learn to become like our Father, and children are the way to do that.
Yes,
because that is his role, is to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of his children.
Yes.
So you are practicing godhood every time you do anything for your children. Every time you change a diaper, every time you teach them a lesson, every time you drop them off at some sort of socially or intellectually enriching activity, physically enriching activity, all of it is training for God. Your whole life becomes structured around this progress from birth to death, the temple, the Adam and Eve story, following along it. Everything is preparing you for exaltation, and children are just absolutely core to that, and so are therefore absolutely core to your happiness. They're not just some sort of practical thing like, well, other God's children need to come to earth, so we gotta multiply and replenish. Isn't just like, oh darn it, the earth's empty. Here, have sex, you guys. No, it's actually, this is for your benefit, this is for your training, and this is what's going to give you happiness. And I touched on this earlier. It is broken down into liberal and conservative, but that's not the point of this graph. It's kind of the one with the gray and yellow boxes. Okay. But what it shows is across liberal, moderate, and conservative, a marked increase is the one with the yellow and gray boxes. Kind of more down towards the bottom. Okay. Mental health by ideology and marital status. You can see 30% mental health is excellent or very good. 30% unmarried for liberals, 50% for married liberals, 40% for unmarried moderates, then jumps up to 55% for unmarried moderates, and then 42-ish% for unmarried conservatives, and then jumps all the way up for 62% for married conservatives. So a 10-point boost, a 10-plus point boost in saying your mental health is excellent or very good just by having children.
Wow, that is pretty good. Impressive.
Yeah. So, and doctrinally, that fits into our doctrine.
Yes, it does.
Perfectly.
So remember, in 2 Nephi chapter 2, right? He says they would have no children, knowing no joy. He puts joy and children right with each other. Fertility. It's baked into the cake.
Okay, so now our outro is going to be, I do believe, a small clip with our boy Chris Williamson. If I'm not mistaken, you guys put in the Discord an interview that the podcaster Chris Williamson did with Louise Perry. it will be just Jews and Mormons.
Yes.
Is that
that's
ringing
right.
a bell? Okay, I'm going to pull this up, see what she or he has to say.
Yeah. Great.
Decline of birth rates. All of the people who are anti-natalist or anti-children or family creation, but also from the left, need to read one book on behavioral genetics to realize that if you want your particular philosophical ideology, political ideology to keep going, in the space of 100 years, it's just going to be Ashkenazi Jews and Mormons and you guys are going to be, because again, political ideology is like 60% heritable.
I agree with you. And people have been worrying about this for like 150 years.
Decline of birth rates.
It's going to be Ashkenazi Jews and Mormons. That's what it's going to be. Now, I want to take us back to the very beginning of this podcast.
Okay.
Sister Lily Fries said that a prophecy from Joseph Smith said that LDS women, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, saintly women would be the only ones willing to bear children. Now, children is plural. We're already seeing that the average birth rate in the West is dipping below 2. It's dipping below 2. Okay. People are not willing to have children any longer. It's fading out of style. Okay. My advice to anybody out there on the micro is children are the greatest thing in your entire life. They're the most fun you're ever going to have. They will make you grow and learn better than anything else ever will. We're not talking to the people who have fertility issues. Those are real. We're not talking to them.
Or you can't get married despite your best efforts.
Yes. Or you can't get married. Look, that's fine. We're talking about the people who are choosing not to obey the first commandment, to multiply and replenish the earth. Always have them younger than you think you're ready for. Always have more than you think you're able to. That's my motto. Have them younger and have more of them. And someday when you're old and gray and 70 years old and you're looking at a room filled with your posterity, all, saying goodbye to your grandchild who's going on a mission, you will have greater joy and fulfillment in that moment than anything you ever possibly could have done with those freer years on Instagram or traveling with your spouse or living in a more posh home because you didn't have a baby. I think there's nothing compared to looking at your righteous posterity like that. So have them younger than you think you're ready for, have more than you think you're able to. And Joseph Smith's prophecy, we should be the last ones on earth willing to have children. We are a sci-fi pagan sex cult. You heard it here.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say, Luke, finish.
Yeah,
up?
2 points. One was from our good friend Sky Sorensen, who is, despite having same-sex attraction, decided to get married and to have children. I think he just had his 3rd recently.
Wow.
And I saw a post from him recently that says, the best evidence I have that marriage and family is ordained by God is I can be sitting in a car with one kid screaming about his goldfish and the other one asking when's the next Bluey episode they can watch, with a Disney song blaring in the background, and I can look over at my wife and realize I wouldn't have it any other way. The only way that makes sense is if it was from God.
Wow.
Point number 2. Let me sit up a little bit. Is we talk about how bad society's getting, and some people are worried about global warming, some people are worried about the globalist takeover of the entire world. How can we bring children into this? Shouldn't we fix things up a little bit? Maybe in a decade we can have children.
They will fix it.
And the quote that I saw recently said, "Never apologize for raising dragon slayers in a world of dragons."
Oh, that's making it into the intro, baby.
And I thought that was just absolutely amazing. Having children is a vote of confidence for the future. And the commandment to have hope is one of the 3 core commandments of what our worldview should be like. And there's no better way to express your hope in the world than to have babies.
Okay, and I'm just stoked. I'm just stoked to hear that. I never thought of it that way, that we're living in a time of fulfillment of prophecy. When he said only LDS women will be willing to bear children, you never really view that in the plural until the fertility rate drops below 2. When it drops out of the plural and into the singular, and only women in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are having children, holy crap, we just fulfilled prophecy. This is nuts, man.
Yeah.
You always view this as something that's going to happen in like Gadiant and Robbers Z, some post-apocalyptic movie set in 2085. It's not happening in Fallout New Vegas. It's happening in the Western United States of 2024.
Yeah, Dallin H. Oaks said, Satan's most strenuous opposition is directed at whatever is most important to God's plan. This opposition includes seeking to discourage childbearing, especially by parents who will raise children in truth. Remember, according to the Apocrypha, that's the reason God destroyed the earth, is because no one was having any more kids. They were all sterilizing their women.
Whoa.
In the Book of Enoch, in the Book of the Giants, that's why God destroyed the earth, because they refused to have more children. And remember, Joseph said, as Noah came before the flood, so I come before the fire. So it shall be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, when no one will be willing to have children anymore, except for the saints. So make yourself different. Be a rebel. Go make some babies. It's the funnest thing to do, and the outcome is cute little bubbly babies. Go have some babies.
Okay, awesome. Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Where do we go wrong? Which we don't, and we all know. But you can fight us in the comments if you want. Okay, but don't think you have much ammo to stand or any leg to stand on in this one. And we got a lot of ammo in them facts and figures. But please, if you would like to attempt, give us your best effort, and Jonah and Luke will be there answering your misguided attempts at dunking on us. Or if you just want to compliment us, sure, great. Just tell us how great we did in this one. We'll always take it. If you'd like to support the channel, please make sure you check us out at WardRadio.com.
Studies have shown that the Ward Radio shirts increase fertility by 25%.
Yes, exactly.
True, yes.
Yes.
25.4%.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They result in immediate marriage on site with any other fans of the channel. No, I'm just kidding. We can't claim any of that stuff. But yeah, if you'd like to support the channel, please consider purchasing a shirt on wardradio.com. Also, if you're a person of means, we got really cool stuff coming up. Please consider a contribution via Zelle. And as always, for this and more, please make sure you check us out at wardradio.com.
Passion, be about it all action.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. We assume if you made it this far that you liked our content, so please make sure you like this video and you share it with your friends. Now, in order to keep this content flowing freely, we need your help. If you're a person of means, please check us out on Venmo, the CashApp, or Zelle, and consider a direct contribution to the channel. Or you could always go to wardradio.com and sign up for our newsletter there and receive all of our latest Ward Radio news articles directly to your inbox. And while you're there, maybe consider purchasing some merch. We have some really cool hats, some really cool shirts, so you can strut your stuff and support the channel that way. Or if you're a kind of person that wants to just help out with some of the equipment in the studio, we have an Amazon wish list linked in the description as well. And don't forget scripturenotes.com. You have to read your scriptures daily, and scripturenotes.com is frankly the coolest way to study your scriptures, and they're a very generous sponsor of this channel. So please consider a free trial with scripturenotes.com. The link to Scripture Notes will also be in the description of this video. Either way, whether you're pressing this little button right here to subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends, or whether you are actually hitting this button right here just to watch another video, we look forward to seeing you in the next program.